Thanks for following Knockout Crypto. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. On YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now. Knockout Crypto, that bottom red button that says subscribe. Click on that, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Let's jump into today's news. So, rejected again, the SEC predictably denies 9 Bitcoin ETF proposals. The hopes of Bitcoin bulls ate the dust once again as the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, disapproved 9 more Bitcoin ETF applications. The U.S. regulator rejected 2 ETFs by ProShares that would track Bitcoin future contracts, 5 inverse and leverage ETFs from Dexion, and another one from Granite Shares. It continues to hold its stance against the potential fraud and manipulation of Bitcoin markets, citing that applicants had not met the SEC's requirement of designating rules to prevent these malpractices. The SEC's judgment further mentions that they had not received any evidence that they could prove the significant size of Bitcoin futures market, as was quoted in the ETF applications. It read, surveillance sharing with a regulated market of significant size related to Bitcoin is necessary to satisfy the statutory requirement that the exchange rules be designated to prevent fraudulent and manipulative acts and practices. The SEC also cleared that it did not evaluate the technological and investment potential of Bitcoin and blockchain technology before taking its decision. The outcome solely rested on applicants' failure to abide by individual sections of the Exchange Act. The agency also cited a quote from the letter it received from CBOE, the UX exchange offering Bitcoin futures. It read, additionally, the president and COO of the CFE recently acknowledged in a letter to the commission staff that Bitcoin futures trading volumes on CBO Futures Exchange and CME may not currently be sufficient to support ETPs seeking 100% long or short exposure to Bitcoin. Wow. So this is saying that the CBOE has also said that they don't have the trading volume, may not have the trading on futures trading volume to support 100% long or short exposure to Bitcoin. The ETF rejection brings no surprise. The reasons mentioned in the SEC's latest rejections are similar to those given at the time of the Winklevoss twins Bitcoin ETF disapproval, twice in a row. Only recently, the regulator had postponed its decision on the ETF by VanEck Solid X Bitcoin Trust until September 30th, raising an alarm for applicants whose verdicts were scheduled to come before the said date. But despite the series of disapprovals, some believe the SEC will approve a Bitcoin ETF soon. Ali Hassan, the co-founder and CEO of Crescent Crypto, predicts it will happen in the next 18 months. We do think that a product is coming soon, he told CNBC earlier this month. Perhaps in the next 18 months, we will see a Bitcoin-only ETF. The outcome of Bitcoin ETFs also concerned the performance of Bitcoin markets in general. So far, the market has reacted negatively to each one of the rejections as mentioned above. At the same time, the speculation of a positive outcome has historically pumped the Bitcoin value. Only today, the BTC USD had risen by over 7% ahead of the SEC's announcement. Renowned Bitcoin evangelist Andreas Antonopoulos, on the other hand, believes Bitcoin ETFs are no good news. Opening up these ETFs only increases the ability of institutional investors to manipulate the prices of commodities, he argued. So some people are really torn on the ETF. I think those 9 ETFs were going to be rejected regardless. I think a lot of people believe that ahead of time anyway, and they actually did it before the date. So in the case of the ProShares rejection, the commission is disapproving this proposal rule change because, as discussed below, the exchange has not met its burden under Exchange Act and the commission's rules of practice to demonstrate that this proposal is consistent with the requirements of the Exchange Act Section 6B5, in particular the requirement that a national security exchange rules be designed to prevent fraudulent and manipulative acts and practices. In case of the Dexion 5 proposed ETF, the Commission is disapproving this proposed rule change because, as discussed, the exchange has not met its burden under the Exchange Act and the Commission's rules of practice to demonstrate its proposal is consistent with the requirements of the Exchange Act Section 6B5, in particular the requirement that a national security exchange be designated to prevent fraudulent and manipulative acts and practices. In all of the rejections, the SEC says it's not Bitcoin. They're more worried about market manipulation and market fraudulent practices. At the same time, the SEC did concede a notable point that investors would gain an extra layer of protection by trading exchange-based products for Bitcoin, while also contending that possible benefits should be held against other considerations. The Commission acknowledges that compared to trading in an unregulated Bitcoin spot market, trading a Bitcoin-based ETF on a national security exchange may provide some additional protection to investors, but the Commission must consider that this potential benefit in the broader context of whether the proposal meets each of the applicant's requirements of the Exchange Act, officials argue in the pro-share rejections. You can see the full rejections here. I'm going to put these links in the video comment area so you can get these rejections and the full paper so you can read the rejection for yourself. But this is to be expected. We're not surprised that the Bitcoin, that these 9 ETFs were delayed. A lot of people already knew this. As you can see, the Bitcoin price is still 6,400. We haven't changed very much based on this news. I would say that to me, BAC is way more important than the Bitcoin ETFs. I think BAC opens up a whole nother, having Microsoft, having the New York Stock Exchange support Bitcoin, to me is way more important than having a Bitcoin ETF from the CBOE. Let me know what you think about these 9 Bitcoin ETF proposals in the video comments below. Thank you for following Knockout Crypto. Watch and comment, like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, guys. Thank you for your support.